Well, thank you all so much. How about Max Miller, one of our great new members? It is such an honor to be here with RJC, with all of what you represent, especially at this crucial time. Look, a lot's been said the last few weeks about some of the internal turmoil in the House of Representatives. Well, let me tell you, in a few minutes, I'm about to introduce the new House Speaker, Mike Johnson, and you're not going to be concerned about House turmoil because we have a vision. We are very focused on what we need to do to get this country back on track, and you're going to hear it from our new Speaker. But there's bigger division. There is bigger turmoil around the world, and it starts in Israel. And we all know what's at stake. For those of us who have worked with the leaders in Israel for a long, long time, we've always known that the challenges are there. When you go to Israel, you see it everywhere. And there's always a concern of what may come. But it's here. And what Hamas started did not happen alone. And we've got to be very clear. And in fact, the very first action that was taken once we got a new speaker just a few days ago was to pass a strong resolution to say we stand with Israel in their right to defend themselves from this terrorist, barbaric attack. It was an overwhelming piece of legislation, but it gave you glimpses of the fault lines. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we're going to continue to do to confront this terror that we're all involved in. But I also want to be very clear that what's going on in other parts of the world, we are not immune from here. It's sad to say, but in moments like this, anti-Semitism pops its ugly head, and this time is no different. We're seeing it around college campuses. We're seeing it in the halls of Congress. One of my Democrat colleagues, still to this day has a post up on her social media blaming Israel for the bombing of the hospital in Gaza that was fired by an Hamas rocket. Everyone knows it was an Hamas rocket, and yet a sitting Democrat member of Congress is still posting that it was Israel's fault. This is still going on. A number of those members of Congress who co-sponsored the legislation, to stand with Israel just last week, ended up not voting for the bill. Not voting for the bill because of the pressures coming from the left. Again, we see it on college campuses. Next week, we're going to have a resolution on the floor to condemn the actions of anti-Semitism on college campuses across our country. If you cannot stand against terrorism today, when can you? Something else that's critically important, and this has been a major, major flaw of this administration's foreign policy for too long, because when the Biden administration shows weakness, it hurts our allies, but it emboldens our enemies around the world, and Iran is front and center. Everybody knows Iran has been working with Hamas. The reports that are out there within days of the attack, the Wall Street Journal chronicled in detail how for months, if not over a year, Iran was plotting with Hamas and other terrorist organizations for this horrific, barbaric invasion of Israel and the deaths that go along with it. And yet the administration still refuses to call out Iran because they're so focused on trying to help Iran get a nuclear weapon. How in God's name can you be working with Iran right now when they're going to try to get not only a nuclear weapon, but you've seen the Biden administration drop their sanctions against Iranian oil. Iran made over $30 billion last year selling their oil on world markets that they use to fund Hamas and other terrorism. Next week, we will bring a bill to the floor of the House of Representatives to block Iranian oil from being sold on world markets. And again, while everybody was talking about turmoil, as Majority Leader, I was working with our chairman to make sure that they were working in committee these last few weeks to get these bills ready to go. There is another bill we're going to be bringing to the floor in the next 2 weeks, and you've all heard about this. For whatever reason, again, getting back to this, for whatever bizarre bond that the Biden administration wants to form with Iran, they did a hostage swap that involved $6 billion that the Ayatollah himself said he can use for any purpose, including funding Hamas terrorism. That money is sitting in accounts. We have legislation that we're going to bring to the floor to freeze the $6 billion so Iran doesn't get access to that money. We have got to be bold. We have got to be strong. This is a time where we stand united with Israel, but we've got to also recognize the role that other countries play, and Iran is front and center. And if you try to ignore that role, you are ignoring the largest source of funding and coordination that Hamas and other terrorist organizations like Hezbollah are getting to continue to plot more and more attacks. We are also going to bring legislation to give Israel the funding it needs to replenish Iron Dome and other strategic missile systems. I've spoken with Ambassador Herzog and our other leaders in Israel. They know the tools they need. This is a time where we need to make sure they have everything they need to fight, to win. We have been the first ally, the first nation to recognize Israel as a Jewish state. When they're under attack, the United States will be there day one, day two, until the last day, until this is over. It's not going to be short. It's not going to be easy, but we will not stop standing by the side of Israel until they have won this battle, reclaimed the land, got the hostages back, and wiped out Hamas forever. This is a war that has to be won. We now have a speaker that I am proud to introduce to you as a great leader, someone that if you don't know him, you're going to love him because he loves Israel. He loves freedom in America. He is in this fight. He has got our House back working. Again, his very first piece of legislation he called up as the new Speaker of the House was to bring this resolution to stand with Israel and show our strong support. We then got our appropriations bills moving again. We've got the House working again. It is so important that we have a Republican House, and so many of you have been critical to that effort. We need to maintain a Republican House so we can keep moving this agenda, even if the Biden administration doesn't want this agenda to move. The country wants this agenda to move. And if this bill gets through the House, I believe these bills will pass the Senate. They will get to the president's desk, and he will have to sign these bills because we're providing the leadership, and that leadership starts at the top. And the top of that leadership is our great new speaker, someone I've known for almost 20 years from North Louisiana, my dear friend, the new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson.